Okay, let's talk about how to use Rhino to 3D model our little Duplo models. As you guys probably realized when you were doing your plan views of your Duplos as well as your perspective views and whatnot, these little guys are a lot more complex than you might initially think. And that's okay. We have lots of tools here in Rhino which are going to help us build out our Duplos. Now, unlike all of you, I do not have a Duplo character built out. So I just made a real quick little guy, two pieces, this little red brick and this green brick here. Um, I made sure to do a quick little sketch in perspective to make sure I understood the form, and then I went in and built out um, a top, side, and bottom view. Um, this dashed line shows you kind of where things are x-raying through. So for example, you wouldn't see this little peg, but it is in there, this little green peg here. And then the blue lines are, of course, my dimensions. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between this drawing and my Rhino model as I work so that you guys can kind of see what it is that I am checking and cross-referencing. I recommend that you have your plan views from your initial 18 by 24. I recommend that you have those up and available to you. So they're going to help you quite a bit as you get building. So here I am in my Rhino view, and I want to build a pretty simple little brick. Oh, that's one more thing actually. So let's just talk about this real quick. So my red brick and my green brick, I noticed they're actually very similar to one another. They're a little bit different in the guts, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. At least like from the exterior, very similar. So my red brick is just this little rectangle, square top, and 4 pegs. My green brick is the same thing, but with a little addition onto it, right? Like right around here, I have this radius which comes down and makes it curved. But otherwise, these two bricks are essentially identical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my red brick first. I won't worry about the interior because they're different interiors. I'll build my red brick first, and then I'll build my green brick by making a copy of my red brick and modifying it. So it should save me a lot of work on the back end. So when you open up Rhino, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to come up here to File, and you're going to hit New. You're already open in a file, as you can see, but we want to make sure that we are using the right measurements. So I'm going to come over here to Small Objects Inches because that is what we've been using for class. I'll open it up, and it'll look functionally the same, but I'll notice that in the bottom left-hand corner of my display, it says inches down here. It also tells me what my default layer is set to. In this case, it's default black layer right here. I also want to make sure really quickly, if you're following along, that your settings are set to the same things as mine. These will be important as we start modeling. So go ahead and check end, near, point, mid, and center if you haven't already got those checked off. Don't check any of the rest of these, but I do want to make sure that you have a little checkbox next to each of those guys. And then down here at the bottom, make sure that grid snap and ortho are turned off, so they'll be dulled. And then make sure that planar, O-snap, and gumball are all turned on. That way we're all looking at the same thing as we follow along. Okay, so the very first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go ahead and double click on my perspective window to bring it into like full screen. I can go back to having all 4 of these open at any time by double clicking on this little perspective call out right here. So double click on it, go to my 4 windows, double click again, I go back to full screen perspective. Great. So I want to make this little red brick. It is a 1 1/4 by 1 1/4 square, and it is 3/4 of an inch tall, not including the pegs, right? So I'll go back over here to Rhino. And I'm going to make sure that I'm on my solid tools right here, this little solid tools tab. And I'm going to come over on the left-hand side and I'm going to grab my box. So I'll just click on box. And I'll notice that up at the top here, my commands all change, right? So I'm now active in my box command. You can also type in box and it'll bring you the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to type, it asking me, it's saying like, hey, where do you want the first corner of your box to be? And I'm just going to type in 0 and I'll hit enter. And I'll see that as I do that up here, it like follows the commands that I just did. So it says first corner of base is at 0. Why did I say 0? 0 is my origin point. It is smack dab in the middle of my like my modeling surface. And when I measure stuff, I measure an inch or 5 inches, whatever, it's all going to be measured off of that origin point. So for example, if I say positive plus 5 inches or regular 5 inches, it'll go 5 inches this way. If I go negative 5 inches, it'll go in the opposite direction, and so on. So my box is 1 1/4 by 1 1/4 by 3/4 of an inch, right? So I'll type in, it's asking me what do I want my length to be. I type in 1.25 and I hit enter, and now it's got that length locked. So see where before it was kind of going wherever, now it's locked onto that length. Now it's asking me for the width. I type in again 1.25. I've got a perfect square, and now it's asking me, all right, how tall do you want this guy? I can kind of move my slider up and down if I don't care about the height, but I do. I want it to be 0.75 or 3/4, and I'll hit enter. And now I can zoom in on it. I'm just using my scroll wheel here. And I can zoom in on my brick. I can hold down shift and use my right mouse button to pan, and I can take a look at it. And you know what? That already looks pretty close to this guy. But we're missing something, right? We're missing these pegs here. And I want to make sure that all of my pegs are evenly distributed and that they're all identical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build one peg, and then I'm going to copy it into like across the top here. So I'll go ahead and reference these measurements that I took. And basically what we've got 4, well really 8, if you include the ones on the green brick, pegs here, each of them identical. They each have a diameter of 3/8 of an inch, or 0.375 inches, and their distance from the edge of the brick to the center of the cylinder is 5/16 of an inch. So I care about the center because when I'm drawing like a circle or a cylinder, and by the way, you'll notice like here I am typing in just circle. I'm not going to go search for where that button is. I'm just going to type in the command, and then I get to a point. So you'll watch here. I'll backspace that and do that again. Pay attention to the top left-hand corner of my screen. As I type in circle, C-I-R, I'll see a drop-down menu appear, and I can toggle through that using my arrow keys if I see something else that I want. I'm going for a circle here, and then it appears at the top. And as soon as I've typed in enough letters that it kind of identifies it, I can just hit enter, and it'll automatically go to circle. Okay, so when you open up a circular command, like a cylinder, like a circle, whatever, the first thing it's going to ask you is for the center point. You can change that if you want. You could do like a 2-point circle if you want. Here, let me do that again. You'll see that by default up here, it says center of circle, and it wants you to like click or tell it like a point, like I can say 0 again, it'll go to the origin. But I've also got other options for each subsequent command, so it can affect stuff, right? So right now, it knows where my center is, and now it's asking me, in boldface right here, what do I want the radius to be? But maybe I don't know the radius, but I do know the diameter. I can come up here and just click on diameter, and then I can type in whatever. What did I say it was? Diameter is 3/8 of an inch. So I can type in 3/8, hit enter, and there's a circle with a diameter of 3/8 of an inch instead of radius of 3/8 of an inch. Anyway, so you can manipulate your commands by clicking on the words up here as they appear. Just pay attention to that as I'm going through this. So I want to make a rectangle. I want to make a cylinder that is 5/16 of an inch away from the edge of this box. How am I going to do that? It's squared off, right? Like it's the same on this edge as it is on like the far edge and whatnot. I know that. So that means that it's also going to be 5/16 of an inch away from this edge and then from this one over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'll type in rectangle, hit enter. And it's going to ask me, hey, where do you want the first corner of that rectangle? And I could put it in the origin point again. I could hit 0 and just snap it to the origin. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my little crosshairs over the top like corner of my box here. And I'll click there. And now I'm going to type in that, let's see, what's the measurement? 5/16. So I'll type in 5/16, enter, and then 5/16 again. Whoop, 5/16, enter again. All right, so now this corner right here is 5/16 of an inch away from this edge and this edge, which means this is the center of my circle, or my cylinder, right? And my cylinder's diameter is 3/8 of an inch. So what am I going to do now to get that cylinder on there? Well, I can come over here to my solid tools and I can click on the cylinder, or I can just, type in cylinder. And up here I've typed in CYL, and I see that cylinder is the default command. So I don't have to type the rest of the word, I just hit enter. And now it's asking me for the base of my cylinder. Where do I want it? And I'm going to hover over the corner, and I'll see a little pop up, it'll say end, the corner of this rectangle, and I'll click right there. So now the center of that corner, or I'm sorry, the center of the cylinder is right there. Now I want to set my diameter. By default, I believe it's set to radius. So just make sure that you hover up here, upper left, click on diameter, and then our diameter is 3/8 of an inch. So I'll type that in, 3/8. I'll hit enter. And now it's asking me how tall I want it. The total height of this peg is 3/16 of an inch tall. So I will type in 3/16, enter. Boom. And now I've got a cylinder. Fantastic. And now I want to hollow it out, right? It is hollowed out. Shelled out pegs like that, right? And it's kind of tricky to tell exactly how wide that little lip is on there. Like this little ridge right here. The closest I can guess is that it's 1/16, maybe even a little smaller. But for our purposes, let's go with 1/16. We'll say that that's, the total amount shelled out there. And I want to shell that out, right? Like, I don't want this to be a solid cylinder. I want it to be hollow. I'm going to come up here. It'll look like a hexagon. It's going to say shell closed polysurface. That's kind of a longer command, so I prefer to just click on this one. But I'll click on it, and it'll be active. And it'll say select faces to remove from closed polysurface. Leave at least one face unselected. So I'm going to click on the top surface here. I'm basically saying, like, I want it to be hollow in that direction. Click on this surface. And then instead of hitting enter, I'm going to come up here to the top, and I'm going to click on where it says thickness. Right now it's saying, like, the thickness of the wall is going to be 1 inch. Definitely don't want that. That's bigger than the whole cylinder. Instead, I want it to be 1/16. So I type that in. And then I'll go ahead, and when I'm ready to go, I can hit either enter, or also when you are confirming a command, you can right click instead. So I'll right click, and there it is, shelled out. And you know what? I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at this, and it doesn't look quite, it looks too thick, right? Let's try that again. I'll Control Z that. By the way, if you want to Control Z is undo. If you want to redo in Rhino, this always trips me up, but it's Control Y. So Control Z to undo, Control Y to redo. Control Y that, and then I want to shell it again, so I'll come back up here. I click on the face I want to take out, and then that was 1/16, right? Is 1/32 of an inch crazy? That's so tiny. Let's see what that looks like. 1/32. Enter. No. Enter. That actually looks closer. Let's go with that. I think that's a little closer to what we want. Okay, so Or at least it looks a lot more accurate, right? It's paper thin, but okay. Um, Great. So now I've got one of my hollow cylinders. I want to like mirror it, right? I want it to duplicate evenly uh, across this top square surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this cylinder, and I just do that by clicking on it. Um, and I'm going to type in mirror, mirror, enter. And it'll ask me, okay, where do you want to start mirroring from? And I'm going to hover along the edge of my box, like the top edge, until I get the little pop-up that says mid. That means I'm exactly halfway along this line. I'll click here for mid. And I'm going to hold down shift. And what that does, you'll see those little white tick marks appearing. I'll hold down shift and I'll lock to that axis, to that, in this case, the y-axis. Hold down shift and I see it mirror across that axis. If I don't hold down shift, it'll be loose. You know, I can guess, but it won't be perfect. Hold down shift, click, boom. Now I've got two pegs. Let's do the same thing, but this time I'm going to mirror them across this axis to get them on the other side. So I'm going to click this guy, hold down shift, and then click on this guy. Now I've got them both, right? And then I'll do the same thing. I'll type mirror. Start my mirror plane along the midpoint, this time of this line right here. Midpoint. Hold down shift. Click again. Okay, and I'll hit escape to deselect. And there are my pegs. It's looking pretty good. Okay. Let's delete this little box. I don't think we need it anymore. And now I want to say, okay, I've got all these cylinders, but like this object, for example, is different. Like it's a different object, and I can tell when I click on it, different from this box. I want them all to be the same object, right? Because they're connected on my brick, they should be connected here too. So I'm going to, if I want to grab multiple objects, I can click on them and hold down shift and keep clicking. Or something else that you can do is you can just click and drag like that. You'll get this little blue highlighter box. And whatever is totally in the box will be included in your selection. So here I clicked and dragged. Now I'm letting go. It's all yellow, which means it's all highlighted. I can also, if you can't get the whole thing in the box, like let's say that I'm really like struggling to get everything in there at the same time, if you click and drag backwards, do you see how my highlight box is a dashed line? When I click and drag backwards, anything that's within that dashed box, even a little bit, will be part of my selection. So see how my cylinder is cut off? This bottom right cylinder is cut off here, but it's still partly within that blue box. When I let go, it's selected. So I'm going to grab everything. And I'm going to come up here. I'm still in my Solid Tools tab. I'm going to come all the way over to the left. I'm going to do something called a Boolean union. And basically what that means is that it's going to take objects that intersect and make them one object. Think of it like smashing two pieces of clay together. They become one piece of clay, right? I click Boolean union. It says creating meshes. And sometimes it'll fail. Just pay attention to that. Make sure that it doesn't say like Boolean union failed. But it didn't. And now, if I click on this box, I get the whole object. See that? Real nice. Great. So now we've got one brick.